me not see it.
I need to tell you this now. My hands are shaking. I can barely hold my phone. It started with a heavy smell. It was like wet copper and rot. You know that old apartment on Elm? The one with the peeling gray paint. I moved in there last Tuesday. The air felt thick and cold. It stayed cold even with the heat up. I went to bed early that night. I felt a sharp pinch on my toe. I figured it was just a spider. I kicked the sheets and stayed asleep. The next morning was much worse. My socks felt damp and heavy. I pulled them off in the bathroom. My right big toenail just stayed inside. It didn't tear or even bleed much. It just slid right off like wet paper. The skin underneath was a bruised purple. It looked like raw, spoiled steak. I stared at it for a long time. I thought I was just lacking vitamins. Maybe it was some weird fungus. I bought some cream and forgot it. That evening the smell got much louder. It was a physical weight in the hall. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, never came out. He's usually yelling at his TV. Now the whole floor was dead silent. I knocked on his door 3 times. No one answered the heavy wooden frame. I looked down at the floor crack. A dark, oily liquid was seeping out. It looked like old engine oil. It moved slowly across the hallway floor. I stepped back into my own place. My left foot felt cold and slimy. I looked down at my bare feet. 3 more nails were missing now. They were scattered on the hardwood floor. They looked like yellowed seashells. I sat on my sofa and cried. I reached down to touch my foot. My pinky toe felt soft like dough. The bone felt like it was melting. I could smell my own skin rotting. It was a sweet, sickly floral scent. I grabbed a kitchen knife for protection. I don't know why I did that. I felt a scratching inside the walls. It sounded like thousands of tiny needles. The sound moved toward my bedroom door. I stood up to run for it. My feet felt like bags of jelly. Every step left a red, wet print. I forced myself to go to Henderson's. The door was actually slightly ajar now. The copper smell hit me like a truck. I pushed the door with my foot. The hinges groaned like a dying animal. The living room was filled with hair. Long, black strands covered every single surface. It hung from the ceiling like moss. It was growing out of the vents. I saw a shape in the corner. It was Mr. Henderson sitting very still. He looked like a deflated balloon. His skin was draped over the chair. There was no meat left on him. He was just a pile of clothes. His teeth were scattered on the rug. They looked like spilled white dice. I looked at the floor beneath him. A massive hole had been chewed out. Something was breathing deep inside the joists. It sounded wet and very rhythmic. I felt a sudden, hot wetness. I looked down at my own legs. My skin was starting to slide down. It was pooling around my bare ankles. I could see the white leg bones. The scratching in the wall stopped instantly. Then something pale reached out of the hole. It had too many knuckles and joints. It gripped the edge of the floor. It pulled itself up with a wet pop. It didn't have any skin at all. It was just raw, pulsing red muscle. It had my missing toenails for eyes. They were sewn into its wet face. It smiled and showed 1,000 teeth. It whispered my name through its throat. I tried to scream, but nothing came. My tongue felt heavy and disconnected now. It fell out of my open mouth. I watched it twitch on the floor. The thing crawled toward me very fast. It wanted the rest of my skin. It wanted to wear me like silk. I am typing this with bone nubs. It is right outside my door now. It is scratching at the lock. I can hear the wood splintering apart. Please help me before it finishes me. Don't go into the old gray house. It is waiting for new skin there. It is so hungry and so cold.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
You know those stupid chain emails our parents used to send back in the day? The ones with the sparkly gifts of angels or the send this to 10 people or you'll have bad luck for a decade type of thing. My mom never really grew out of that. She's one of those people who still believes everything she sees on Facebook, so her inbox is basically a graveyard of urban legends and blessings from strangers. Last Tuesday, she sent me one that looked a little different. Usually, they're colorful and annoying, but this one was just a plain text block with a single, low-resolution attachment. The subject line was just my name, Mark. The body of the message was weirdly blunt. It didn't have the usual God loves you fluff. It just said, don't let the cycle break. The flesh needs to know where to go next. Forward to 5 people you love within 20 minutes, or the debt is collected from the source. Underneath was a photo. It was grainy, like it had been taken on a flip phone from 2005. It showed a basement, at least, I think it was a basement, with a single wooden chair in the center. There was a dark shape slumped on the chair, but the pixels were so smeared it just looked like a heap of laundry. I rolled my eyes, figured Mom had finally clicked on a virus, and I deleted it. I didn't even reply. I had a deadline for work, and I didn't have time for digital ghost stories. About an hour later, I tried calling her to tell her to change her password. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't think much of it until I got a text from my dad. He just sent a single photo. No text. It was the same chair from the email, but this time the photo was high definition. Crystal clear. It was in their basement, right next to the old furnace that always rattles in the winter. And it wasn't laundry on the chair. It was my mom. She wasn't dead, not yet. She was stripped down to her underwear, and someone had used heavy-duty industrial staples to fix her skin to the wood of the chair. Dozens of them, silver and shiny, driven into her thighs, her stomach, and her forearms. Her mouth was wide open in a silent scream, but I could see why there was no sound. Her tongue had been pulled out as far as it could go and stapled to her own chest. The worst part was her eyes. They were wide, darting around, looking at the camera. My dad's reflection was visible in the glossy surface of a metal toolbox in the corner. He wasn't helping her. He was holding the phone with one hand and a staple. Gun in the other. I dropped my phone. My heart wasn't just racing, it felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my ribs. I picked the phone back up, my fingers slick with sweat, and tried to call him. He picked up on the first ring. I didn't hear his voice. I just heard the wet, rhythmic thwack hiss of the staple gun. Thwack hiss. Thwack hiss. And then, a sound I can only describe as white paper tearing. That was my mom's skin giving way as she tried to flinch. Dad. I whispered. Dad, what the hell are you doing? Stop. Please stop. The cycle, Mark, he said. His voice was flat. Empty. You didn't forward it. The debt has to be collected from the source. She's the source. She sent it to you. You're the break in the chain. I'm calling the police, I screamed, already running from my front door. They won't get here before the harvesting starts, he replied calmly. And Mark, check your inbox again. The cycle doesn't stop just because one link is broken. It just finds a shorter path. I hung up and sprinted to my car, but as I sat in the driver's seat, my laptop, which was sitting in the passenger side, chimed. "You have a new message." I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did. It was an email from my mom's account. The timestamp was from 1 minute ago. The subject line, "The Collection." I opened it. It was a video file. I clicked play, and my stomach turned over so hard I thought I was going to vomit right there on the upholstery. The video was a close-up of my mom's face. Someone, my dad, was using a pair of rusted pliers. He wasn't being quick about it. He took the pliers and gripped her lower eyelid. He twisted, slowly, the metal teeth of the tool biting into the soft, pink flesh. I watched in a trance of pure horror as the skin began to stretch and then pop, the lid tearing away from the socket like a piece of overcooked meat. She didn't pass out. Her body was surging with so much adrenaline that she stayed wide awake for every second of it. He did the other eye next. Then he moved to her ears. He wasn't just hurting her, he was unmaking her. He was peeling her like an orange, removing the layers of a person until only the raw, red machinery underneath was left. The video ended with a shot of the floor. There was a pile of things. Small, wet heaps of gray and white. It took me a second to realize I was looking at her fingers. He had snapped them off at the knuckles, one by one, and arranged them in a circle on the concrete floor. In the center of that circle of fingers lay my mom's phone. It was vibrating. I looked down at my own hand. My phone was vibrating too. It was a FaceTime call from my mom's number. I answered it. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could talk him down. Maybe I just couldn't help myself. The screen flickered to life. The camera was mounted on something, maybe a tripod. It was aimed at the basement door. My dad was standing there, but he wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at someone else who had just entered the room. It was a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing a slick, yellow raincoat, even though it hadn't rained in weeks. He was holding a large, galvanized bucket. The man in the raincoat walked over to my mom, or what was left of her. She was just a red, pulsing mass of exposed muscle and bone now, held upright only by the staples. The man reached into his bucket and pulled out a handful of something dark and swarming. Salt. It was coarse, industrial-grade rock salt. He didn't just sprinkle it. He took a handful and shoved it directly into the open, raw cavity where her stomach had been sliced open. The sound she made, it wasn't human. It was a high-pitched, whistling hardware store shriek that came from her throat because she didn't have lips or a tongue left to shape the noise. Her entire body convulsed so violently that the staples began to rip out of the wood, bringing chunks of her flesh with them. The man in the raincoat turned then. He looked directly into the camera. He didn't have a face. Not really. It was just a flat surface of scarred, grafted skin with 2 tiny holes for nostrils and a slit for a mouth that had been sewn shut with thick, black twine. He pointed a finger at the screen. Then he held up a piece of paper. On it, written in what looked like fresh, dark blood, were 5 names. My sister. My girlfriend. My 2 best friends. And me. "The debt is not paid," a voice whispered. It didn't come from the phone. It came from the back seat of my car. I froze. I could feel the cold air from the AC hitting the back of my neck, but there was a different kind of cold settling in behind me. A wet, metallic smell filled the small space of the car, the smell of a butcher shop at the end of a long day. I looked in the rearview mirror. The man in the yellow raincoat was sitting in my back seat. His bucket was perched on his lap. He reached out with a hand that had no fingernails, just raw, blackened tips, and he touched the back of my head. His skin felt like wet leather. "You broke the chain, Mark," the voice rasped. The mouth on the man didn't move, the stitches stayed tight. The sound was coming from inside my own skull. Now you become the link. He reached into the bucket. He didn't pull out salt this time. He pulled out a heavy, steel-staple gun. I tried to scream, but his other hand clamped over my mouth. His grip was impossible. It felt like my jawbone was going to crack under the pressure. He leaned forward, pressing his featureless face against the side of mine, and I could smell the rot on him, the scent of 1,000 broken chains and 1,000 sources who had been harvested before us. "Don't worry," the voice echoed. "We'll send the photo to your friends. We'll see who loves you enough to keep the cycle moving." The first staple went into my cheek, pinning my face to the headrest. The pain was white hot, a jagged spike of fire that made my vision go black for a split second. But I didn't pass out. I couldn't. As he positioned the gun against my collarbone, I saw my phone on the dashboard. The screen was still active. The email was still there. "Forward to 5 people you love." My thumb hovered over the screen, shaking, covered in the blood dripping from my face. I looked at the man in the mirror. He smiled, or the skin where a mouth should be crinkled in a way that suggested a smile. I hit select all. I hit forward. The man in the raincoat paused. He pulled the staple gun away from my throat. He sat back in the seat, the heavy vinyl creaking under his weight. "Good boy," the voice whispered. He didn't disappear. He's still sitting there. He's been in my back seat for 3 days now. I can't leave the car. I can't stop driving. Every time I think about calling for help, he just taps the staple gun against the window. I'm watching my phone. I'm waiting to see which one of you opens the message. I'm waiting to see who breaks the chain next. Because the bucket is almost empty, and he told me he needs more material to fill it back up. Check your inbox, man. Please. Just forward it. I don't want to see what's in the bucket next.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
You know how you get those random calls from numbers that look almost like yours? The ones where you figure it's just some spoofed telemarketer trying to sell you insurance? I used to just ignore them, or sometimes I'd pick up and mute the mic just to see how long they'd stay on the line. But there was this one night, back in November, when the rain was hitting the windows so hard it sounded like someone was trying to tap their way through the glass. I was exhausted, halfway into that heavy sleep where your limbs feel like lead, and my phone started buzzing on the nightstand. I didn't even look at the caller ID. I just swiped and put it to my ear, mumbling some half-asleep hello. There was nothing but this thick, heavy silence on the other end. Not the empty silence of a disconnected line, but the kind where you can actually hear the room tone of wherever the other person is. It sounded cold. Then there was a sound, a wet, rhythmic clicking, like someone snapping their tongue against the roof of a mouth filled with phlegm. I hung up, shoved the phone under my pillow, and went back to sleep. That was the first mistake. When I woke up the next morning, I had 17 missed calls from that same number. All of them were exactly 3 minutes apart. I felt that weird, cold spike of adrenaline you get when something just feels off. I checked my voicemail. There was one message, nearly 4 minutes long. I played it while I was making coffee, thinking it was probably some prank. The audio started with that same wet clicking. Then it shifted into a sound I can't quite describe without getting sick. It was the sound of something being dragged, something heavy and soft. Like a carcass being pulled across a corrugated metal floor. Underneath that, there was a wet, tearing noise. Imagine taking a raw chicken and slowly pulling the skin away from the muscle, that specific pop and stretch of connective tissue. And then a voice came through. It wasn't a scream. It was a wet, gurgling wheeze, like someone trying to speak through a throat full of pennies and blood. It said my full name. Not my nickname. My full, legal name. I dropped the mug. The ceramic shattered and hot coffee splashed across my bare feet, but I didn't even feel the burn. I was staring at the phone. How did a telemarketer know my full name and sound like they were dying in a butcher shop? I tried to call the number back, but a recording just said the number was no longer in service. That evening, I was sitting in my living room with all the lights on. I'm not a paranoid guy, but the air in the house felt different. It felt dense. Around 10 p.m., the phone buzzed again. My heart hit my ribs like a hammer. It was the same number. I picked up. I didn't say a word. "I'm looking at the green chair," the voice said. It was clearer now, less gurgling, but still had this jagged, breathless quality to it. The one with the cigarette burn on the left armrest. "You're sitting in it. You look pale." I bolted upright, my eyes darting to the window. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. There's no balcony. There's no fire escape. I ran to the window and ripped the curtains open. Nothing. Just the empty street and the glistening black asphalt. I locked the front door, checked the deadbolt, and pushed my heavy dresser in front of the bedroom door. I stayed awake all night, clutching a kitchen knife, watching the shadows stretch across the ceiling. The calls stopped for 2 days. I almost convinced myself it was some high-tech stalker, someone who had hacked my webcam or something. I even did a factory reset on my phone. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was taking control. On the 3rd night, the smell started. It began in the hallway, a cloyingly sweet, metallic stench. It was the smell of a dumpster behind a grocery store in the middle of a heatwave, mixed with the copper tang of an open wound. I checked the pipes, I checked under the floorboards, I looked in the vents. Nothing. I went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face, and that's when I saw the first physical sign. There was a smudge on the mirror. A dark, brownish red streak. I wiped it with a tissue, and it was still wet. It was blood. And there, tucked into the corner of the medicine cabinet frame, was a small piece of something pale and grisly. I picked it up with a shaking hand. It was a human fingernail. It hadn't been clipped, it had been torn off, with the jagged, bloody root still attached to the base. My phone vibrated in my pocket. One new text message from the number. It was a photo. It was a picture of me, taken from behind, while I was standing at the bathroom mirror looking at the fingernail. The angle was from inside the bathtub, behind the shower curtain. I didn't scream. My throat just closed up. I spun around and ripped the shower curtain open. The tub was empty, but it was slick with a layer of dark, viscous fluid. It looked like black bile mixed with clotted blood. The drain was clogged with clumps of long, dark hair that definitely weren't mine. I backed out of the bathroom, tripping over my own feet, and that's when the phone started ringing again. I answered it because I didn't know what else to do. I was hysterical. "What do you want? Who are you?" I was sobbing, the knife shaking in my hand. "I just wanted to show you what's left," the voice whispered. "They didn't take it all. They leave the parts that don't taste right." Then the clicking started again, but it wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from the vent above my head. I looked up, and I saw something pale and wet pressed against the slats of the metal grate. It was a human eye. It was milky with cataracts, darting back and forth with a frantic, mindless energy. I ran for the front door, shoving the dresser aside with a strength I didn't know I had. I fumbled with the locks, my breath coming in jagged gasps. I burst out into the hallway and ran for the stairs. I didn't look back. I drove to a motel 3 towns over and stayed in a room with no windows. I changed my number. I bought a new phone. I stayed there for a week, vibrating with terror every time a floorboard creaked. Eventually, you have to go back. You run out of money. You have to work. I told myself it was a hallucination brought on by stress. I told myself someone was playing a sick, elaborate prank. I went back to the apartment with a police officer. We searched the whole place. No blood. No hair in the drain. No eye in the vent. The officer looked at me like I was a tweaker and left. I spent the afternoon cleaning. I felt better. I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare. I sat down on my sofa and turned on the TV, trying to drown out the silence. My new phone, the one with the unlisted number, was sitting on the coffee table. It lit up. No caller ID. Just unknown. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. My hands were vibrating so hard I could barely hold my remote. The notification popped up immediately. One new message. I played it. The sound that came out of the speaker wasn't a voice. It was a wet, tearing sound, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Thump. 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 And then the sound of my own voice. Not a recording of me talking, but a recording of me from that morning, singing in the shower. I stood up to run, but my legs felt like they were made of water. I looked toward the kitchen, and I saw it. The pantry. Door was cracked open. A hand, if you can even call it that, was gripping the edge of the door. The skin was translucent, stretched so tight over the bone that it was starting to split at the knuckles, revealing the raw, yellowed marrow beneath. The fingers were impossibly long, the tips ending in raw, bloody stumps where the nails had been ripped away. The door creaked open further. It wasn't a person. It was a collection of parts. It looked like someone had taken 3 or 4 bodies and stitched them together with rusted wire. One arm was thick and muscular, covered in coarse hair. The other was thin, feminine, and pale, ending in those shredded fingers. The face was the worst part. It didn't have a jaw. The lower half of its head was just a swinging curtain of shredded muscle and exposed vertebrae, dripping a constant stream of black, foul-smelling fluid onto the floor. It didn't move fast. It dragged itself toward me, the sound of its raw bones scraping against the hardwood floor making my teeth ache. It made that clicking sound, the tongue snapping against the roof of the mouth. I tried to get to the door, but it was between me and the exit. It lunged with a sudden, jerky speed, its long, mismatched arms swinging like pendulums. It caught my leg. Its grip was like a vice, the jagged wire stitches in its palm tearing into my calf. I felt my skin unzip. I screamed, hitting it with the remote, with my fists, with anything I could reach. It didn't even flinch. It just pulled me toward the kitchen, its movements rhythmic and mechanical. I managed to kick it in the exposed throat, and for a second, it loosened its grip. I scrambled away, sliding in the trail of black slime it had left behind. I locked myself in the bedroom, the same room I thought I'd made safe. I'm sitting here now, leaning against the door. The clicking has stopped. It's quiet out there. Too quiet. My phone just buzzed. A text message. No text, just an audio file. I don't want to open it. I know what it is. It's the sound of the bedroom door being unlocked from the outside. I can hear the key turning right now. I don't have a key to this door. I lost it years ago, but I can hear it. Click, click, click. The handle is starting to turn. It's moving so slowly. I can see the gap between the door and the frame widening. I can see those pale, nailless fingers curling around the edge of the wood. The smell is filling the room now, that sweet, rotting, metallic stench. It's not here to kill me. I realize that now. It's here to add to itself. It needs a better jaw. It needs better legs. If you get a call from a number that looks like yours, don't ignore it. Throw the phone away. Run. Because once it has your voice, it's already inside.
Next story.
Some debts are paid in skin. Don't look up.
Next story is yours. Take a look at the shadow in the corner of your room. Are you sure it was that shape a minute ago? Subscribe or be the next in line.